It was June 1943, deep in the Pacific Ocean. A United States Army Air Forces bomber flew through scattered clouds, searching for a lost aircraft. The men on board were tired, hungry, and hopeful that they might save a crew that had gone missing the day before. Among them was 26-year-old Second Lieutenant Louis Zamperini, a bombardier from Torrance, California. Before the war, he had been a runner, an Olympic athlete who once dreamed only of medals and finish lines. Now his race was survival. Suddenly one of the engines coughed, sputtered, and failed. Then another. The plane lurched and began to fall. Metal shrieked inside the cabin. Men shouted prayers and curses as they prepared for impact. A heartbeat later, the bomber struck the water at over 200 miles per hour. It broke apart instantly. 11 men went down. Only 3 surfaced: Louis Zamperini, pilot Russell Phillips, and tail gunner Francis McNamara. The wreckage was gone within minutes. The 3 survivors clung to 2 small yellow life rafts, dazed and bleeding. Everything they had was a tiny survival kit, a few bars of chocolate, and a patch of faith. The ocean around them stretched forever. At first they laughed. The adrenaline still burned through their veins. "At least the weather's nice," Louis joked. It was the kind of gallows humor that soldiers used to keep fear away. But when night came, the laughter faded. The sea was silent, endless, and terrifying. On the 3rd day, they realized their rations were gone. In panic during the night, Mac had eaten all the chocolate. The others were furious, but Louis only said quietly, "We'll figure it out," and they did. They collected rainwater in tins, caught small fish with improvised hooks, even snatched a seabird from the sky once and used its innards as bait. Sharks circled their rafts constantly, dark shapes gliding just beneath the surface. Days blended into weeks. The sun scorched their skin. Salt cracked their lips until they bled. Sometimes they spoke of food, sometimes of home. Louis described his mother's kitchen, the smell of sauce and bread, the warmth of family. It kept them sane. One morning they heard a distant engine, a plane. They waved a mirror and shouted. The aircraft turned toward them and hope exploded in their chests. Then came the bullets. It was a Japanese fighter. Machine gun rounds tore holes through the water and the rafts. They threw themselves flat, praying. When the plane finally flew off, the rubber boats were shredded. Using trembling hands, Louis patched the holes with bits of tape and glue. Miraculously, they stayed afloat by the 30th day. Their bodies were little more than bones and sunburn. They saw things that weren't their islands, boats, voices calling their names. They drifted through hallucinations and silence. Louis sang to keep them awake. "If I can take it," he said to himself, "I can make it." Then a storm rolled in. Waves towered over them. Lightning split the sky. Rain hammered their faces. Louis tied himself to the raft with rope so he wouldn't be thrown overboard. He screamed into the darkness, "If you get me through this, I'll serve you the rest of my life." The storm raged for hours, and somehow they survived. The next morning the sea was calm again, as if nothing had happened. The sun rose red over the horizon, and for the first time Louis felt something like peace. But not everyone could hold on. On the 33rd night, Mac died quietly in his sleep. Louis and Phil said a prayer and let his body slip into the sea. The sharks took him within seconds. Louis stared into the waves and whispered, "Rest easy, brother." Now there were 2. The ocean stretched endlessly, and still they drifted. On the 42nd day, another storm hit, stronger than before. Yet when it passed, a green line appeared on the horizon. Land. After 47 days adrift, they had floated more than 2,000 miles across the Pacific. Their raft touched the edge of an island. They were too weak to stand, but salvation had finally come. Or so they thought. The men who found them wore uniforms, Japanese uniforms. Louis and Phil were taken prisoner. They were sent to a camp where starvation and beatings replaced the sun and the sharks. For 2 years Louis endured the cruelty of his captors, especially one guard nicknamed the Bird, who made it his mission to break him. But Louis refused to give in. He stood when they ordered him to kneel. He smiled when they tried to crush his spirit. When the war ended in 1945, he returned home a hero, thin, scarred, and haunted. The newspapers called him the man who couldn't be broken. But at night he dreamed of his tormentors. He drank to silence the memories. Years later, still lost in anger, Louis remembered the storm, the prayer, the promise he had made on the raft. He turned his life toward faith and forgiveness. He met the man who had tried to destroy him and forgave him face to face. The war inside him finally ended. Louis Zamperini lived to the age of 97. He ran again, smiled again, and told his story so others would believe that even when everything is lost, hope can still survive. He once said, "If I can take it, I can make it." For 47 days he fought the ocean. For the rest of his life he fought to forgive, and in both battles he won. This is the true story of Louis Zamperini, the pilot who crashed into the sea and survived for 47 days.